Cool. Thank you, Megan, so much for introducing us. I really appreciate it. And thank you again for having us here tonight. So we just wanted to come and do a webinar for everyone to introduce some topics revolving around mental health and some of the support that's out there for people with spinal cord injuries. Specifically, we want to tell you a little bit about coaching and context, but we also want to give you a little bit of information about some of the other options that are out there in regards to mental health and some of the supports that you guys can access to help with anything that you might be experiencing in that area. So some of the objectives for tonight's webinar are to learn about different mental health approaches, to recognize occupational therapy's role in mental health, to understand coaching in context and its role in mental health, and to learn about ongoing studies related to mental health and/or the spinal cord injury population at the Department of Occupational Therapy at Thomas Jefferson University. So a little background about why we wanted to present some of this information is because, as I'm sure all of you are aware, as you have experienced this life-changing event, spinal cord injury is a life-changing event, and many people with spinal cord injury and their caregivers do adapt well, but others may not always have that same experience. So the experience can create some psychosocial challenges that increase the risk for depression, anxiety, and reduce the quality of life. So what can we do about that? There are some behavioral interventions out there, but a lot of them are very not amenable to rigid and prescriptive protocols. So they require you to go once a week. You have to follow very specific instructions in order to create this behavioral change, right? And they do need to be tailored to the person's goals and consider the influence of their unique context. However, that is not always something that is easily accessible to people, right? So the cost of healthcare makes it very, very hard to access mental health and behavioral health. It's also very challenging for people with spinal cord injury to get from point A to point B if telehealth is not an option. So what are some other options besides psychology and psychotherapy that can help address some of these mental health related challenges or difficulties that you may be experiencing? So now we're going to talk about a couple of mental health approaches that some you may be familiar with, some you may not. So psychosocial interventions is kind of a big umbrella term, which covers a lot of different types of treatments. So these are the interventions that are behavioral, and they are usually delivered by a licensed healthcare provider, such as a counselor, psychologist, or a clinical social worker. Some of these treatments can include different types of psychotherapy and social and vocational training. Psychotherapy typically relates to like talk therapy. So going into a session and having a conversation with your psychologist to kind of determine different avenues or strategies you might use to address some of those mental health challenges you might be facing. These treatments do aim to provide support, education, and guidance to people with mental illness, as well as their families. So what are some of these types of psychosocial treatments? They include psychotherapy, psychoeducation, psychosocial rehab, vocational rehab, and case management. Some other mental health approaches that you may be familiar with are cognitive behavioral therapy. So kind of changing the way that you think about things and terms of then to change the way that you do things. So changing your mind to change your behavior. There's also motivational interviewing, psychoanalysis and psychodynamic therapies, and humanistic therapy. There also are a list of alternative and complementarian approaches. So we listed some of those out here below. Some of these may be very alternative type approaches that you may not have thought of as ways to deal with mental health and some of the stressors that come with mental health type difficulties. So some of these can be nutritional, such as special diets, use of probiotics, or microbial-based therapies. There can also be psychological approaches, such as meditation, relaxation therapy, music therapy, and hypnosis. There's also physical alternative approaches, such as acupuncture, massage, exercise, and other physical activity. And combination type approaches, such as the use of yoga, dance therapy, mindful eating, and even Tai Chi. So how does occupational therapy play a role in mental health? As I'm sure many of you are aware, you have likely experienced and or participated in occupational therapy post spinal cord injury, typically in the acute setting or in the outpatient setting. So if you look at this big picture here, it does look a little overwhelming, but it does show the client, the person in the middle of the entire picture, right? So what that's showing is that we as occupational therapists always want to stay client-centered. So it's our goal to work with our client to help them achieve whatever goals they want to work on, right? So in the acute hospital, that might be transferring in and out of your wheelchair, getting dressed, showering, etc. But what you may not realize is that in the acute setting, we can also work on mental health. So we can mitigate trauma and stress. We can address anxiety and depression after injury. In the outpatient clinic, we can focus on strength-based interventions. We can also develop strategies to manage emotions. So some of these things occupational therapy can focus on, but it may not have been something that OT focused on while you were experiencing OT post-injury in the settings that you came across occupational therapy. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you a little bit about how OT plays a role in some of the other areas that you may not be familiar with. So occupational therapy can address mental health and population health and wellness. So we can promote positive mental health by identifying early symptoms. We can also help decrease unhealthy routines, chronic stress, negative thinking, and hopelessness. In the home, in the community, we can manage anxiety to adapt and adjust to life roles. We can help by establishing healthy routines and review occupational outlets to support meaningful interests. So what does that mean? We can help our clients find alternative things that they can participate in that are meaningful to them, that may enable them to engage in a more healthy routine and therefore could decrease some of those negative signs and symptoms associated with mental health. Occupational therapist also plays a role in schools, early intervention, and community education. So we can promote the ease of transition for services for youth with intellectual disabilities. So transitioning from elementary school to high school or middle school or whatever that may be, they will need their occupational therapy services to follow with them. We also can work in long-term care and skilled nursing facilities where we can enhance participation in occupation and avoid occupational deprivation. So what does that mean? That means that as a human, you have the ability and you have really the right to participate in any of the occupations that you would like to participate in. So knowing that you have that right as occupational therapists, we can try to open doorways for you to be able to participate in those activities or occupations that you find interesting. Because if we don't have occupations to participate in on a day-to-day basis, the quality of life that we experience substantially decreases. We also play a role in academia and research, which we'll talk about a little bit more towards the end of our PowerPoint and telling you guys a little bit about some of the research opportunities that exist at Thomas Jefferson. But with mental health, we can continue to collaborate with interprofessionals in research, work on program development, and improve the clinical experience. We can also teach and support other researchers and change the methods to engage with peers. So we're trying to do a lot, and we play a part in a lot of different roles as occupational therapists to hopefully improve some of the mental health crises that we're experiencing in this world now post-pandemic. So I'm going to pass off to Rach so she can talk a little bit about coaching.
Thank you, Stephanie. So again, my name is Rachel Kim, and I'm an occupational therapist and a certified competent coach. And I'm just going to talk a little bit more about coaching, what it is. And then we actually have an ongoing coaching study. And so I'll be playing some video clips from someone who has a spinal cord injury who has received coaching and sort of what coaching means and has been based off their own experience and their own words. So coaching and mental health. Coaching, I know on the first one of the earlier slides, Stephanie sort of had a slide talking about alternative and complementarian approaches. So coaching is considered more of an alternative and complementarian approach right now. It's currently not a reimbursable service through insurance. And so that's something that our team is looking into more, and we do discuss in certain workshops and trainings that we provide with different healthcare providers, different potential billing codes that you can use when you're integrating and infusing coaching in your practice. But it's important to know that at this point, it's not typically a reimbursable service. There are different coaches that may be used for different purposes. You may have heard the word coaching. It's become very trendy lately. But it's important to know that not all forms of coaching are meant to be used with clients with disabilities, mental illness, or other health conditions, whereas there are some forms of coaching that are specifically used for fostering changes in habits that relate to promoting better health, such as health coaching. And coaching may be used on its own as just a one-on-one coaching session, but it can also be used infused within clinical practice by implementing coaching strategies and skills to enable a client to be able to gain more clarity, establish action plans, and really be able to address challenges that are impacting their daily life and therefore their mental health. Okay, so what is coaching really? So one of the larger organizations for coaching is the International Coaching Federation. And per their definition, coaching is a partnering with clients in thought-provoking and creative process that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. At Jefferson, within the Department of Occupational Therapy, our center focuses on a form of coaching called coaching in context. With this framework of coaching, we actually have the picture here is our framework and model of how we operate within our coaching and context system. And we believe that the provider or coach through conversations is there to facilitate the client's self-discovery of insights and solutions that enable them to progress towards their goals. And so we say that because the coach is not intended to pave the way or to give answers or to tell the client what to do, but really to facilitate the client's own thought process and allow them to discover the insights and solutions in order to accomplish what they're seeking to accomplish. It's conversation based, and so it's meant to be a very natural process where you almost feel like you're having a conversation with a friend. It's very solution focused and it's very client driven, and so it's client driven to the point where sometimes when you're going through coaching, you're kind of wondering, am I doing this right? I feel like I'm talking too much. That's really the goal of coaching. Is we even say that coaches are supposed to speak 20% of the time, with clients speaking about 80% of the time as a general rule. And it's really because the client is intended to be the leader, the decision maker throughout the process, with the coach really just guiding and facilitating and collaborating with the client in order to reach a place where the client's able to accomplish their goals. It's anchored in positive psychology, where the clients are really viewed as their own resourceful experts. And really building upon the client's strengths. So the coach is not coming in thinking, I have all this experience as a coach, I'm going to help you accomplish your goals. But it's really being able to tap into the client as the expert in their own life and recognizing the strengths and resources that you have available to you in order to accomplish what you need to. And this can help lead to greater long-term outcomes, so that even a year after coaching, you're maybe be able to implement some of the skills that you were able to gain through coaching. And so even with the model, I just want to point out that infinity symbol between those three blocks, it's really to emphasize that it's not just a 1, 2, 3 step process, but coaching is very much an iterative process where you're constantly going back and forth between setting your goals, discovering, what's kind of facilitating client awareness and understanding strategies and solutions and bridges and barriers to reaching your goals, and then setting a plan. And then maybe once you set a plan, a new barrier comes up, you have to go back to the discover phase in order to help troubleshoot again. But coaching is very much meant to be a natural and iterative process of just constant collaboration back and forth between the coach and the client. So here is a client testimonial about what is coaching. We'll see her a couple more times throughout this presentation, but she is someone who has a C5 to 6 incomplete spinal cord injury. She's a mother of 2 children who are 16 and 18 years old, and she does work with her local church. Okay, so I'm just going to play the video. Oh, sorry about that. What is coaching in your own words?
Coaching felt to me like having somebody walk alongside me as I was processing things that were going on in my life and helping me to pick out some of the nuances and find different avenues that I could go down to try and reach goals that I had.
And so Really, the key components of coaching are the skills that a coach uses, such as active listening, reflective responding, and skillful questions. And we found that these three ingredients really enable a client to be able to better reach their goals. Because instead of just giving clients a plan that may or may not be implemented, by giving them answers that may or not be relevant to their lives or fit within their routines, by listening to what a client's saying and responding in a way that encourages further reflection and answering exploratory and probing questions, that we're able to work with clients to allow them to better understand their own situation, break certain thought process that gets stuck and help a client to better reach their goals that will then improve their mental health. And so before I delve into this chart, I just want to make a disclaimer that this chart is not intended to be comprehensive, and it may not fully reflect the scope of each practice area here of mentoring and counseling. We know that there's many forms of mentoring and many forms of counseling, just like there are many forms of coaching. And it's just given there much overlap that can occur between these approaches, this chart may appear a bit more reductive, but it's really intended just to simplify and highlight the core differences that we see in each area. And so in coaching, mentoring, and counseling, in coaching, we really see the client as the expert, whereas in mentoring and counseling, it's really more of the professional that tends to be the expert that's guiding the sessions. And then whereas mentoring is more focused on developing, committing to learning specific goals or skills in order to help for accomplishment of future goals, and traditional counseling tends to be a little bit more focused on understanding the past to improve the present and the future. Coaching is really focused just completely on the present, on your day-to-day life, and the day-to-day routines and roles and habits that you have that you would want to improve upon, just to improve your mental health and your day-to-day quality of life. So I'll just give you a few seconds just to skim through look over the chart again and take some time to digest. Okay. So a chart's nice and dandy, but I thought that we would have Diana, our friend, come back and share a little bit about her own experiences and how coaching felt different to her from other therapies that she's received. How is coaching different from other forms of therapy or counseling that you may have received in the past?
Coaching is different in that when I have been in therapy, there seemed to be, you bring up an issue and then the therapist wants to give you ways of thinking about it so that you can do things, like almost like homework maybe. Whereas with coaching, I found that I would be sharing whatever was on my heart that day, and we would come up with goals, and then my coach would just help me figure out how I was going to navigate to reach my goals. There was no homework, no specific, I think you ought to do this or that. It really came from feeding back to me where I was so that then I could come up with the solutions. And that's one of the best things about coaching, because I feel like that's sustainable over time. I continue to use some of the ideas and the things that I got out of coaching.
Okay. So some examples of goals that may be sought to accomplish through coaching are things like time management, healthy eating, stress management, employment search, increasing social participation, fitness and exercise goals, healthy habits, work-life balance, and daily habits. And I know a lot of these are pretty broad categories on themselves, and it's really just to highlight that coaching can really target a lot of different aspects. And so other specific examples is we had one client who she really wanted to accomplish a triathlon, but she had a lot of uncertainty within herself, and she had some mental health barriers that were getting in the way of helping her to be able to accomplish that goal. And so physically, she was very physically fit and very able to do it, but she just had struggling with some of the stress and the time management and thoughts of self-doubt on whether or not she would be able to accomplish and really actually do the triathlon, even though she was physically capable and working with a physical trainer in order to reach that. And so through coaching, she was able to reach her goal. She did the triathlon this past summer, I believe. And then even Diana, the person who we've had on the video, her goal was really focused on healthy eating and around mental health, because she had found that she had a sort of negative, or not the best relationship with food, where she would sometimes feel shame with certain food that she ate, or that she would use food as a coping mechanism a lot of times in a negative way. And so really through coaching, she was able to identify certain triggers, identify behaviors, and be able to make a plan that worked for herself beyond just a canned or cookie cutter type of solution, something that was really tailored to her in order to accomplish her goals of having a more positive relationship with food. So now I'm going to go into a little bit more about evidence and client perspectives, because our center has done a number of studies related to coaching. And so I just want to highlight some of the types of studies that are done, some of the type of populations who have received coaching, as well as highlight a few more client perspectives. So there have been numerous studies that use coaching in occupational therapy. So types of clients that have been able to receive coaching have been anywhere from youth to adults, and whether they're youth with adolescents with physical disabilities or college students. For adults, it could be anywhere from someone who's elderly or someone who's a young adult that has a spinal cord injury or a stroke. We also have worked with a lot of individuals who are care partners, whether or not they're both being a spouse of someone with a stroke survivor, or a parent of a child with spinal cord injury, autism, or cerebral palsy. And a quick summary of the evidence and benefits from these studies have been increased ratings of performance and satisfaction, increased feelings of parental competence, increased quality of life and self-efficacy, increased perception of success and their ability to be successful in their daily life, increased goal attainment, decreased parent stress, and increased use of strategies, not only in the immediate day-to-day, but also continuously over a longer period of time. And for these coaching sessions typically range between 3 to 12 sessions, with an average about 9 sessions. So I just want to focusing on 2 different studies that our center did. So this study is findings from the studies of mothers with children with spinal cord injury. And so 3 major themes of growth that were identified through interviews with the mothers were new learning, client-coach relationship, and gaining insight. And so new learning was really the mothers expressing that they learned new strategies to shift their perspectives from the way that they were initially dealing with their problems, and acquiring new problem-solving skills to affect positive change in their lives. Another was in really valuing the client-coach relationship. A lot of mothers value the accountability, convenience, and support that are received from the client-coach relationship, as well as gaining insight. And so a lot of these mothers expressed being able to be accountable to themselves and gain confidence through increased self-reflection. And then as they started to accomplish more and more goals, they had found themselves to feel more competent and more able to tackle each day. Another study is a study with students with disabilities. And so they were, it says 3, I apologize, it should be 4 major themes of growth. And so they were academic and personal growth, open and supportive environment, perception of success, and accountability and engagement. And so students reported really being able to learn skills that improved their personal academic life, whether that be communication, time management, the different ways that they process information, and how to leverage that in order to be more successful. They appreciated having a safe space that allowed them to feel comfortable to even share what their goals were, their struggles or concerns, which was able to lead to greater goal attainment. Perception of success. Through collaboration, students were able to identify goals that needed to be accomplished and to see their situation clearer. And accountability and engagement. The students emphasized the importance of having accountability and this commitment to accomplishing your goals, and appreciation for the coach process for providing that sort of a framework to allow them to have that. And so these are some client perspectives and quotes from other studies that we've had. I'll give you time so you can just read through this slide on your own, but I'm just going to highlight 2 of them and read them out loud to us. The second one, it was great that my coach gave me the opportunity to bounce ideas off. She did not just come up with solutions herself, it helped to change my thinking pattern. And the third one, I'll be a lot more successful after going through the coaching process. Like I said, it causes me to deconstruct and kind of deal with core issues and set me up for success in the future. Okay. So we actually have a current coaching study going on now that I just want to talk a little bit more about as well. And so for our sessions, the way that it's set up is that we have a coaching introduction in which you would meet with me to go through our study procedures. And then we're offering up to 10 sessions of free coaching that are 30 to 45 minutes long. And so you would be able to meet with a coach about once a week for about 10 weeks. And you would be able to have a coaching session for 30 to 45 minutes where you would be able to work on any goals that you identified with your coach. And then as a study wrap up, you would connect back to me and complete any post-study procedures. And this is just our friend Diane again, just giving another summary about really what she liked about coaching and a wrap up about her experience of coaching. What did you like about coaching? How did coaching benefit you?
I really loved that I had a specific time once a week that I was setting aside time for me to just be with myself, to think about where I am in the moment and where I'd like to be in the not too distant future. It was wonderful having someone who was there dedicated just to listening to me and helping me to see things in a slightly different way.
Okay. And so, as I said earlier, because coaching is not necessarily a reimbursable service, and so for a lot of coaching service, you would be expected to pay out of pocket. I do want to highlight again our current coaching study, so that if you are a person with an SCI or you have a care partner with that we are offering the opportunity to receive free coaching through this ongoing study. And so if you're interested, you can reach out to me at the email below. There are also sometimes people who are interested in becoming coaches themselves after hearing about this. And so if you are interested in learning about coaching, taking some trainings or workshops in coachings, or even getting some sort of a certification in coaching, our department does offer a practice certificate in coaching and context. And so if you scan the QR code, it should take you to the website for that. But if you also just Google Coaching Context Jefferson, then it should come up. The person who leads that is Dr. Marie Christine Potvin. And so I will give a disclaimer that for that certification, you do need to have at least a bachelor's degree. But if not, there are also trainings and workshops that are periodically offered if you are interested in learning more. And then I do want to take also some time to highlight other spinal cord injury studies that we have going on in our center, which Stephanie is going to tell you a little bit more about.
Thanks, Rachel. So like Rachel said, we have pictures of all of our flyers up here for some of the studies that are currently going on within the center. So you can get 10 free coaching sessions, like Rachel said. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to contact her. Her email is at the bottom of her flyer. And then the middle flyer is for a spinal cord injury research study that I'm currently running. So we're trying to improve access to healthcare for people with spinal cord injuries. As I'm sure many of you are aware, getting from point A to point B is not easy after a spinal cord injury. Mobilizing with a power wheelchair, getting that in and out of an adapted vehicle, getting an adapted vehicle, all of those things can be very challenging and time consuming. And medical transport is not the most reliable. So we're trying to validate 3 assessments to be completed through a remote platform. So whether that's Zoom, Skype, Teams, whatever it may be, we're trying to prove that an OT or PT evaluation or assessment can be completed through a remote platform so that people with spinal cord injuries don't have to travel from point A to point B to get the services and care that they need. So this would involve 3 sessions. One of them is in Center City, Philadelphia, and the other 2 sessions would be from the comfort of your own home. You would take all of the assessment material home with you. And for each assessment session, you get paid $50 a session, in addition to $50 for the interview at the end of the study. We're also opening that up to caregivers as well. So caregivers are also eligible and able to get paid $50 a session for each session and interview that they would be able to participate in as well. So we really are looking for any and all participants to join our studies at this time so we can kind of collect all of that data that we need to collect to improve the acceptance of coaching by insurance companies and to improve the acceptance of remote assessment completion by insurance companies as well. So we can really open the door to healthcare for people that may not have the accessibility that they wish that they did.
Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, these are a list of our references. And we just want to thank you for allowing us to speak at this webinar and open it up to if anyone has any questions.
And if
And
you'd like to use the chat for any questions, or you can actually in the chat ask, and I can take you off mute if you'd rather have a verbal conversation with Rachel and or Stephanie.
Thanks, Megan.